I know there is a ton of news happening in the world right now. I want to start with a general question. Hopefully everybody can answer it. We'll start with you, Madam Ambassador. How do you define the role of trust in effective leadership, and tell our audience what steps leaders can take to implement that?
I think it's harder to work for trust now, especially in the labor force. We are working very hard on that also in Norway, and 80% of the Norwegian population do trust government, which is very high compared to other countries, but it's easier to govern Norway. I mean, it's a small country with relatively homogeneous population, so it's so much easier. But in a time of internationalization, globalization, and also mass immigration, we have worked very hard. I mean, one thing is the digitalization of the labor force and continuing education, so we can make sure that people can keep their jobs. So now you'll find very many people in Norway who used to work on the floor with a hard hat. Now they are sitting in the control room with a cap and control the production from there in a very advanced environment. Those who cannot keep up, we have very, very good welfare schemes. And also access to education, I think, is a key. Continuing education, but also equal access to higher education. So that's free in a way, and that gives people a lot of opportunities. And you're not that independent on your parents' income as you are in other countries.
Yeah. One housekeeping thing before we get to you, Tom, I want you to answer this. We have about 23 minutes left on this panel, and we are going to take questions from the audience. So please feel free, once we get through sort of the intro comments here, to there should be something that we can scan, and people can scan here, scan the QR code, and you can submit questions, and we'll take questions from the audience. Tom, how do you define trust in effective leadership, and how are you implementing that?
Sure, and that's we're bringing two lenses to that equation. We ourselves are a global company operating all over the world, and we serve about 2,500 companies globally who operate all over the world. And the easy way to think about this is that anything you observe in Dan's data or beyond is happening in microcosm inside a company. So if you have political divides in society, you have political divides inside the company. If you have geopolitical fissures across the world, you'll have geopolitical fissures in your supply chain around your organization. So the role of a CEO, if you will, has become one of saying, okay, what is it within our company that we create coherence about? What do we stand for as an organization? How do we create an alignment of an inherently unaligned organization, given that you're drawing from all sorts of different people? It's a new challenge for CEOs that, and it's really changed how CEOs need to think about participating in the public arena, because you have to pick and choose which issues you're going to be vocal on, be very careful because they would be highly relevant to your business. You have to be very clear. And at a time of shifting perception, you have to have a few things that you stay very consistent about. We find the best leaders are able to identify those things that are at the intersection of matters to my company and matters to my people, and keep the organization very focused on those.
April, from your perspective from Intel, effective leadership, trust, and how do you implement that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think trust is really fundamental. I think it's kind of the base of everything else. And I think without trust, it's almost impossible to get anything else done, certainly on a regular and consistent basis. And so I think building those trusted relationships with all of your stakeholders is critically important, and it takes time. You know, you have to spend time together, you're investing in that trust, and it can be broken really easily. And so you take all this time to build up that trust. What you don't want to do is do something that breaches that trust. And so whether it's, promises we're making to our employees, to our teammates, to the communities that we work in, to our investors, and probably most importantly to our customers. And so we talk about a lot, we're going through a huge transformation, as I'm sure everyone here knows. we talk a lot about our say-do ratio and wanting to make sure that we do the things that we say we're going to do, but we do them more times over, right? Don't just talk about it, actually go and do the things that we've promised so that people believe that we are dependable. And I think ultimately that's what trust is all about, is the people who you're making those promises to, that you actually follow through and you demonstrate that you're a dependable partner time after time after time after time. And it takes time to build up that trust in those relationships. Some of it is spending time together, like with your employees and your teammates and with your customers, making sure that they can see your promises for delivering, but that you actually then go do it.
You mentioned building trust internally first in your own organization and also externally with your clients and the people that you're working with. Part of that trust, I think, is talent development and finding those people and retaining those people. How are you all doing that? I guess from your perspective, Ambassador, from the public sector and also from the private sector right now, how are you developing that talent and keeping those people at your organizations or within your government or staying in your country to build bigger companies?
First of all, I think we need a new kind of leadership in an era of AI. Authoritarian leadership do not foster creativity and innovation. So that's an important point, I think. And I also believe in a better balance between work and families. We attract a lot of people to Norway because of that. You can have a two-career family.
What does that balance look like compared to the US?
Well, to send your kid to a kindergarten is very cheap in a way. You get 1 year full paid after giving birth. And there is also a quota for the father. So he can also push his employer because he also wants to spend some time with the newborn. And I was a cabinet minister for some years, and it was totally acceptable in Norway if a person in the room just raised his hand and said, "Minister, I have to leave now because I'm going to pick up my kid in the kindergarten." So that was totally acceptable. So, for instance, if you're a business leader in Norway and someone in your leadership, a young man, for instance, doesn't take his father's quota, that gives you a very bad reputation as a leader. It's very, very bad. So Jens Stoltenberg, he was the Secretary General for NATO in 10 years. He's now back in politics, being the Minister of Finance in Norway. So when he was young, he introduced this idea of a father's quota, because it's going to be very hard for a father to tell his employer that I want to spend some time with my newborn. And this has been, I think, very instrumental in order to get more gender equality in Norway.
Tom, what about you? How are you retaining that kind of talent at your company internally, first of all?
It's one of the most interesting sea changes we've seen. American baseball icon Yogi Berra famously said, "It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future." And you really see that in the world of skills and development right now. If you just sort of, let's take an easy example. It was a mantra for decades: go get a computer sciences degree, learn to code. I think it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
CS was the major, and CS is still incredibly powerful. But if there's one thing LLMs do really, really well, it's convert natural language into computer code. And you see that with unemployment rates among recent computer science graduates. Not that being able to program isn't important, but the way in which you would write a program has changed dramatically in the past 4 years. So what we spend a lot of time thinking about for ourselves and for clients is in a world where you cannot predict with certainty what hard skills you will need, you start looking for human attributes that allow you to thrive in a world where there's velocity and volatility around that. Curiosity, resilience, and then you create opportunities for people to re-engage in learning again and again and again. So learning is best not thought of as a phase of a career where you learn and then you do. Back to, if there's say do, there was for a long time learn do. It's learn and do as parallel processes, because I can't give anyone career advice and say, take this college class today and I guarantee you'll be employed for the next 40 years.
Yeah.
And I'd be lying. Well, that's probably why we have trust issues. I'd be lying if I, tempted as I am to say it. But I think we spend a lot of time making sure people cultivate the right attributes of curiosity, resilience, adaptability, and then offering them opportunities to put those to work in lots of different contexts.
Madam Ambassador, I saw you kind of nodding your head there. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just want to say something about AI, because maybe 4 years ago, a diplomat in the Norwegian Foreign Service could send home a report basically based on newspaper and the country he or she worked in. We don't do that any longer because of AI. I mean, you can read newspapers in Oslo from the different countries, so you don't need that kind of diplomacy. And I have also asked AI to write reports that we usually write back home to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's not good. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's better than I expected. And these kind of AI models will be better and better in the future. So we need to focus more on personal relationships, I think, and how you actually use the knowledge that you have. So there's going to be a completely new world, I think, for diplomats all over the world. I mean, traditional reports will not be appreciated the same way as before.
April, you're sort of at the forefront, I think, of where a lot of change in this country is happening right now in Silicon Valley.
Sure.
How do you see the ways that companies are trying to develop talent and also retain that talent changing, especially in your industry right now?
Well, I agree with the ambassador. I think, it's not just changing the way diplomats work, but artificial intelligence is changing the way all of us work. And if it's not, it really should be. And we should all be, really mindful and thinking about that. I think it goes back to what Tom said. I mean, we talk about ABL, which is like always be learning. Like the environment is constantly changing. Every day there's a new crisis. You see the headlines. It's, the challenges that are ahead of us are very different every day than perhaps we expected last year and last month. And so we need our talent and our teams to really be focused on that and staying ahead of that and not be complacent in what they learned in college or what they learned in their career, in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years. And technology is a great example of that. I think it's one of the reasons the need for this talent. I think we all agree that talent is our most important resource. And I think it's why we've seen kind of this evolution of the CHRO, where a lot of people now, I thought it was so interesting when I first got to Silicon Valley. People talk about it as our chief people officer. And it is really like, it's all about people. And, everything is focused on how do we get and retain the best people? How do we train them? How do we encourage them? How do we make sure we're giving them the right tools to innovate? How are they thinking about their work? Why would they stay here instead of, going down the street where they might find maybe it's more interesting? And so just being very focused on that talent, I think is critically important.
Yeah, I mean, I've been shocked in Silicon Valley recently to see these huge salaries that are being offered at some of these big tech companies to keep people in these roles doing, especially AI development. And I mean, like hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. I think that's right. And there's always going to be more money, right? The competitor down the street can always pay more. And we talk about that a lot. And so what is it that makes your relationship with your employees sticky? Some of it's trust. We talked about that at the beginning.
Right.
It's innovation. You want them to be in an environment where they feel like I'm really learning and I'm doing something that's really important. So, we think we're doing work that's really important for the nation and the world. And we talk about that a lot, the storytelling of what are we doing and how are we doing that? And how is your role really critically important to that?
Yeah.
And so, it's challenging, but I think, staying ahead of that issue and continuing those conversations with your people are critically important. And again, I think that's why the role of the chief people officer has become so critically important, because they really are out thinking about all of the people issues and making sure that it's not just an issue for HR, it's for all of our leaders, and that they're, out thinking about best practices and bringing that back for us to be really thinking about and implementing with our teams.
Tom?
I'll piggyback just one thought that I'll piggyback on April's comment, because I think we talk a lot about AI and how it's coming to take all the jobs. We don't talk enough about massive demographic headwinds in pretty much the whole world. And there's one scenario where AI is going to steal all our jobs. There's another where at best it allows us to fight to a standstill against real demographic headwinds and shrinking labor forces in a lot of markets.
Yeah.
And that requires changes to how we think about work, how we think about career span. It's going to be a real challenge that we probably don't talk about enough, but it's part of the reason the Chief People Officer is increasingly at the center of this dialogue, because they have to figure out how you construct a workforce that's part full-time humans, part contingent humans, part digital workers, and put it together in a way that ensures you keep growing an economy.
Tom, I have a double-header question for you. You are helping organizations find talent. How do they balance the use of these data-driven tools like AI or other kinds of computer programs with human judgment when making critical appointments at some of these companies that you're working with? Do you use AI to help companies?
Yeah, we use AI on really think of our business as being a two-sided market, because we assemble lots of information about our clients. If you think about if you're thinking about, let's say, putting a CEO or a chief legal officer into a company, you have to know a lot about the people who might fill that role. You also know a lot about the culture and context of the company.
Who fits,
how you're going to, and they're both equally important. And AI helps us do both of those things really well. Continue to, synthesize, append, understand individuals, and at the same time continue to get deeper and deeper and deeper into clients in ways we probably couldn't have 5 years ago, just to really understand what's going on. There's a tremendous amount of data available on companies that you can digest and form a view as to who's likely to be successful there. And there's a tremendous amount of data that is available to individuals. And we get slightly better, I think, at prediction across time. It's still also a deeply human. If you came to us and said, I need your chief litigator for this, we'd work like crazy. But at the end of the day, you personally have to get along really well.
I was going to say, I was waiting for the but, because I think there is a but, right?
You're,
I mean, you have all this technology you're using maybe to, to help you move more quickly in the search. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, it's a people decision. It comes down to like, are they a fit from a cultural perspective? Are they a continuous learner? So many other human characteristics that the machines can't really decide for us.
We can get a little closer, but ultimately, I would say every career chapter, every career decision you make is like climbing into a crowded minivan for a long drive. In that it's a lot. What matters in that scenario is a lot more important who's in the minivan than where that minivan is going.
I love that you use that, because we always talk about who's on the bus.
Yeah.
And I mean, people from my team are here. I'm like, I want you on the bus with me. It's not a minivan. It's a little bit bigger. It's so crowded. But I love that, that visual, because that it is like you're on the bus with these people for a long time, and you want to have the right people on the bus.
Okay, so I think the takeaway is that human judgment still way more prevalent for your line of work than.
Absolutely.
I think the human interface is critically important.
Yeah.
And that's also for the new generation. They'll now soon get out in the labor force and newly educated, being trained in the era of AI. So I can see really on my kids now that how they train them to use AI, not only come up with facts, but also use it in a critical manner. And being prepared that, okay, if you have delivered your answer by using AI, that's going to be a problem for you. So they are highly skilled in using this fact, so to say. That's going to be a huge advantage for us, I think, in the labor force the coming years. We have a lot to learn from the new generation, the newly educated people. And I think that very many European countries now keep a close eye on the innovating culture here in the US. I mean, it's something we are really struggling for in Europe right now, the openness and the new ideas that fuels innovation. I mean, here in this country, it's totally acceptable to go bankrupt and start up again. You like that? I mean, if a successful people fail and then he or she rise up again, wow, that's even better. So that kind of business culture, I think that's something we all are struggling for in other parts of the world.
And I think that's such an important part of innovative culture is being willing to take that risk and to fail, and that being okay. Because if it's not okay, people are not going to take that risk and, maybe go bankrupt and start another company. But I think you're spot on that that's critically a really important part of the innovative culture is the willingness to fail.
Yeah, and American entrepreneurship too, I would say. You're right. I don't think that that's a cultural thing in other places like it is here. We have just a few minutes before we're going to open it up to questions from the group. I want to hear from everybody about what leadership strategies you're using right now, especially in these moments of such uncertainty and change. And April, maybe we'll start with you for this one.
I mean, again, I go back to trust. I think that it is critically important when you're building your team and you want everybody aligned around the strategy that the company has set and, making sure that you're focused and that, we're going to follow the leadership team. If ultimately your employees don't believe in you and don't, believe in your don't trust the strategy because they don't trust you, nothing is going to happen. So I love the, phrase culture eats strategy, because you can have the best strategy, but if you don't have a great leadership team and a team of employees who trust them, who are willing to follow that strategy and kind of execute on that every day, if they're just kind of coming to work like, here I am, but I don't, no one here is really, looking out for my best interest, I just don't think you can get anything accomplished. So the trust, to me, again, it's the foundation of everything we do.
How are you leading?
You used one C, I'll use another C. You used culture, I'll use curiosity. We're at a special time. This is the first time we've had 5 generations in the workforce at the same time, which is cool, right? It's a testament to innovations in health. But I find just admitting I don't know stuff, asking, being curious, up and down that demographic ladder across differences, across divides, actually really helps. I always say I don't actually have to feign ignorance. I come by it authentically. So if I just walk around and say, I don't know how this works, I don't understand, people are more than happy to spend time with me telling me about it. And I find that's a really good way to get a pulse of the organization, broaden my understanding, and understand where there's some possible coherence in how we drive forward.
What kinds of questions are you asking the folks in your organization then?
It's funny, I'm a relentless curator of questions. So
should be a journalist.
My favorite one is, what's the last thing you changed your mind about? Because there's two reasons to ask that question. One is, if they haven't changed their mind about something, they probably shouldn't. They're failing the test of what we think. But secondly, it's, what are they learning? I get a sense of what they're learning. What's the last new thing you've taught yourself? What's the last thing a client said that surprised you? You sort of get a sense of pulse of the organization.
Okay. Madam Ambassador, you lead, obviously, your embassy here. You report back to your country, to Norway. How are you leading in, really uncertain times right now globally?
Well, in general, I think that after COVID and after so much social media consumption, human interaction is getting much more important than before. In leadership in general, but also I believe as a leader, you need to focus on that. And even though meetings can be inefficient, you need to take that time. Because if you don't have a good conversation with those you're working with, you'll not be able to achieve your targets.
I think there's always the, I see this meme that circulates a lot, or comment from people, this meeting could have been an email kind of thing. But it sounds like you're saying, no, sometimes you do need to meet in person. You need to look someone in the eyes, see their body language response to something, or are there ideas that are coming out of these meetings or things that you think are lacking when you're not having an in-person interaction with someone?
Yeah, but you need a really clear time limits for all meetings, I think. Otherwise, I get crazy. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you should be these meetings should be governed in a tough manner so we get through the agenda. Otherwise, people will get crazy, you know. But still, human interaction is now more important, I believe, than before.
And I'm sure you feel that with diplomacy as well.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's different than before being a diplomat in the city, but yeah. I have a lot of colleagues here, and I think they agree with me.
You want to expound on that a little?
You know, in general, before you could go to Pentagon and get the readouts of what's going on here, it doesn't help the same way right now. I mean, you need to find and make friends and get to see people, meet with people. People back in Norway, they can follow all American podcasts. They can read American newspapers. So we have to give added value by actually being here.
Right.
And that has to do with talk to people, meet with people.
Yeah. Okay, we are going to move into the Q&A portion, I think, of our program here. I don't know how are we getting the questions up?
We have one question from the audience.
Okay.
Some nations are concerned that AI will reduce opportunities for less skilled workforce. With that in mind, how do you sell AI overseas?
Who wants to take a stab at it first?
I think in general that Norway has benefited more from globalization than very many other countries. And robotics is actually bringing jobs back because we have a very high level of wages in Norway. So digitalization has been beneficial. So that's one way to deal with it. The other way is that I think that immigration can be a challenge for some countries, especially if you see a race to the bottom when it comes to wages. So that's another way to, deal with the internationalization and also globalization, also mass immigration, that employers and employees should find some common ground so we don't see a race to the bottom, because I think that's a part of the same question in a way. So I think that it's very important that we include young people now, the next generation, and teach us how to use AI, because it's not very, very complicated. It's actually quite easy if you know how you can get more information out of it. So I think that very many people, also older people, will see the advantages by using AI. Using technology is getting more and more easy rather than the opposite. It was more difficult before.
Yeah, I think I would just add, if people don't adopt technology, they're going to be left behind. And so they're going to be competing against people who are using technology to help them do their job better, differently, more efficiently. And so, just by putting your head in the sand and saying, hey, I'm just going to continue doing the jobs that I used to do, I don't think there will be the jobs that I used to do. I think every job really will be impacted in some way by this technology, whether it's artificial intelligence, augmented reality, whatever the technology platform is. I think we want all of our workers and our stakeholders to be open to that and to think about how they can adopt it in a way that works for them. Not everybody is going to use it and adopt it in the same way, but I do fundamentally think it's changing every job.
Yeah.
I'm sort of hopeful a little bit on this because I completely agree. We tried smashing the looms once, it didn't work. We're going to have even less luck smashing the, massive data centers that were being built anywhere. The Luddites aren't going to get any closer to those than they got to the looms. If there's been one positive development, if you think of AI now on a 15-year cycle, when it first, the earlier versions of AI, RPA, NLP, et cetera. LLMs are really consumer friendly, to the ambassador's point. They're super accessible. It was a sea change in access, not necessarily AI capability, that has driven this. And I think that's a hugely optimistic thing. You can look at demographic accessibility. There are ways in which different means of access, whether spoken, typing, different languages, instantaneous translation. There's lots of good stuff that makes this technology as consumer grade as anything I've ever seen. So I think that's very exciting. It means the barriers to entry to accessing really cutting edge technology have gone down dramatically. I think that's going to be great.
Okay, I think that's a good optimistic note to end on there.
Awesome.
Thank you so much to our panel. Super appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.